a little bit. 6 p.m. Every Wednesday at 6 p.m. You Be the Judge. Bridges presents You Be the Judge. I'm Dr. Paul Dyer, and my other two beautiful co-hosts, Marylin Pierre, who's running for Circuit Court Judge in Montgomery County, Maryland. I have to say that because I get an inbox like, where is she running for a Circuit Court Judge? In Maryland. So if you know anyone in Maryland, in Montgomery County, send them out to vote for Marylin Pierre for Circuit Court Judge. And our esteemed Judge, Claudia Barber. Thank you, all my ladies, for being such a wonderful co-host on Bridges Live Presents You Be the Judge. And we have a special guest, ZANITA Buchanan. I don't know why I saw an M.
Did I spell it right? Okay.
No, you spelled it right.
Spelled right. Good.
Before we get started, I want to let people know that You Be the Judge is an independent format that we like to talk about legal issues around the globe and around the world and in our backyards. But most importantly, we want to give you information, give you a better understanding, and hopefully that takes you into an action. I want to let people know that we have been going through some trials recently, and it has affected our speech because I know I'm spitting out curse words in the bathroom after hearing and seeing a lot of stuff. So it's affected my personal speech. But I want to talk about when we talk to other people, we need to understand how are they speaking and what are they saying, because it's all over the map. And before we get into our guest speaker, I want to give you a little tidbit. Recently, I had eye surgery. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I had cataract surgery. One eye is being corrected, the other eye is being hazy. But it's our viewpoint of where we are that we don't believe that we need correction. So I want to bring you back to that. If you are seeing things through your own vision and you didn't know that they have to be corrected until they're corrected, you might think that that's the vision that you are and that's what it is. So when we look at trials, legal issues, law issues, and personal issues, you might be looking through a lens that's hazy and not that needs to be corrected. So until you open your heart and open your mind, you may be looking through a clouded lens through life. So be careful about the things you say and the things that you believe if you don't know that you could be corrected in a corrective way in viewing things. So I want to add that into us. So thank you, Marylin. How you been, Marylin? How's your week?
Oh, I've been better.
And Judge Claudia Barber.
I'm glad that you introduced me as a candidate for judge in Montgomery County. Yes, please vote for me, support me in any way that you can. And if you do not live in Montgomery County, Maryland, besides sending people to vote for me,
send money.
Send money.
Yeah, send money.
Thank you.
Yeah, send money.
Yeah, because they are coming after me with both barrels, and Judge Barber knows that. My campaign treasurer Wilbur Friedman knows that, and no, they know that in detail.
It's sad. It's literally sad how they are coming after you. We already know that the FBI listens to our calls. We say it comically, but we do know that Judge Claudia Barber is on a listening list. We just know that to be true. They're after her. They've been after her for many, many years. Judge Claudia Barber, how you been?
I'm fine. I'm just fine. I'm thrilled to be here, excited for the show, ready for another opportunity to share and discuss issues.
Marylin, please introduce our guest.
Oh, it is my pleasure. Our guest today is Miss ZANITA Buchanan. Miss Buchanan is the mother of 4 gorgeous homeschool children, or they're now adults, and Miss Buchanan is a quintessential advocate. Leveraging her extensive experience in working as an intimate partner advocate, or IPVA, in the Howard County District Court System, Ms. Buchanan fearlessly empowers women by providing information, legal resources, options, and moral support to victims and survivors by carving out strategies that prioritize their safety. Having helped facilitate over 70 victims obtain orders of protection and navigating them through the court system, Ms. Buchanan also finds time to be an advocate for adults on the autism spectrum, provides vital resources and insights as a divorce consultant. Miss Buchanan loves exercising, dancing in the street, and living her life of freedom to the fullest. If you want an advocate who will fight for you, take on your battles, and lead you to victory, you want to hire Miss Buchanan. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our special guest, Ms. Zanita Buchanan, to You Be the Judge.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we hear you well.
I hope everyone's doing well and looking forward to tomorrow for dinner. Not what Thanksgiving represents for America, but what it represents as far as I'm thankful to have my family and I'm thankful to have a home and those kinds of things. But I wanted to talk about restraining orders in particular. But first, I'm going to talk about the effects of COVID on domestic or intimate partner violence. They say it's doubled. And now that people, especially last year, I think was worse than this year, people can't get away, they couldn't leave. And even if their partner, the abuser, got arrested, he wouldn't be held. Normally, they would hold him maybe 3 days, and then that might give her a chance to get away, make a plan. Now they release them maybe within hours. So it has greatly affected the effects, the way that it's enforced, the woman's ability to get away, the shelter's ability to help, and Howard County shut down their advocacy, which they had in office in the courthouse. They shut that completely down. So I don't know, and it still hasn't opened up to this day. So I don't know what's going to happen with that. But
why was it shut down?
Because they said they were afraid of COVID restrictions. They didn't have the volunteers that wanted to come in and risk, their health. Most of the volunteers were old. When I was doing it, I was the youngest, because they don't want to pay people to do it. So there are not a lot of people that are in that position to take their time to do that. But it's also affected how the police treat and respond to domestic situations. In particular, restraining orders are given, but they're not enforced. So what's the point? Why have restraining orders if you're not going to enforce them?
Let's go back a little bit, if you don't mind, because what is intimate violence? I'm sorry, I forgot the term that you use.
Intimate partner violence.
Yes, thank you.
That would be violence between a married couple, between a same-sex couple, boyfriend and girlfriend, anybody that you share intimate relations with would qualify under that. So, and it's different from a father and a son or sister to sister type violence. It has to do with a love relationships in particular. And a lot of police don't view same-sex partnerships as violence. They only view a man and a woman as having those type of relationships. So if a woman is in a partnership with a woman and she calls, they may not get help at all because they're saying, oh, you're two women, what's the big deal? And get over it, or that type of attitude. So that's one of the problems, because it's higher actually in same-sex relationships than it is in considered, heterosexual relationships. I believe it's because of the pressure of society and those kind of things. And they are told that they're not going to get help, that people are going to look down on them and say, oh, this is what you get for the judgment comes. This is what you get for being in this type of relationship. So it's worse in same-sex relationships. So the judgment needs to come off of it for people to feel comfortable getting help. And instead of asking, why do you stay? Why don't you leave? Why don't, people or like health providers, especially doctors, say, what can I do to help you feel comfortable? What can I do to help you? But many, many times the woman is told, why don't you leave? Why is she staying? And so it's her fault now, or his fault, because men are being abused as well. A woman has to feel more comfortable, safer to leave than it is to stay. So the discomfort in leaving has to outweigh the discomfort in staying. And many
And they
times,
also say, they also say when the victim feels more discomfort in the relationship and is ready to leave, that's when it is the most dangerous for that person because of the pull in terms of, oh, I can't let this person leave.
right, it is the most dangerous time. And I believe the tactics and the plans have to change around that. When they know their partner has a weapon, when their partner has tried to kill before, such as choking. Choking is the most common way that a woman is killed in domestic violence. Then you would go to weapons, but usually they go hand in hand. And then if they lose their job, you really have to take that seriously. But many people think that a restraining order is going to now protect them. 80% of the time it does not. But if they would employ the GPS tracking, I believe from day one, they say once the order is violated, then they will employ the tracking. But many jurisdictions don't deem it valuable, or they deem it too expensive to.
And what is GPS tracking?
Well, that would be like the, monitoring they put on their ankles, or I guess it's mostly put on ankles to monitor someone who's on probation, or to make sure they don't leave, that there's no flight there. But in domestic violence, it's so that, hey, this person cannot get within so many feet of this woman. And if that tracker goes off and it shows he's within so many feet, police are called, they're summoned. She knows to basically hunker down, like get prepared, hide, go somewhere else, because he's coming for you.
Miss Buchanan, we do a show here on one of my other shows. It's called Voices to Be Heard, and it's about domestic violence, domestic disturbance. And we do know that since COVID has been on the rise, it has doubled, actually has tripled. And we know that alcohol has a lot to do with it. Now, the question I really have is, since you've been doing this for such a long time, does the courts really believe that this is not a necessity to protect these victims? Because if they did, wouldn't they employ other services right away instead of waiting? Does it seem like they even care?
It really does not seem in a lot of instances that they care, nor do they understand the complexity of intimate partner violence. Many times I've seen a female judge tell a female, well, it doesn't look like you said he tried to choke you. Well, it doesn't look like he tried to choke you, so you're lying. Or, well, what do you expect? You told him to get up off his butt and do something, and you shouldn't be talking to him that way. So they blame the victim, and it has to do with people's personal thinking, their personal experiences. This judge has been called up many, many times, but she was elected. Appointed. She was appointed, not elected. So they can't get her off the bench. And in Howard County, the cases rotate from courtroom to courtroom. So she doesn't always have domestic violence, but she has shown a bias, a very bad bias towards the abuser. And she seems to always be in their corner when it comes to DV. So it has to do with people not being educated. And they feel like, well, I'm not in that situation, so I don't even care about it. They don't understand why a woman doesn't just leave. They don't understand that abusers can be very charming, and they can come in and say, oh, I just want to be with my kids, and I just want to, when they know the woman is terrified of them, but they're using the kid to be able to have access to her. And so there needs to be a lot more education It should be mandatory, it should be ongoing, because it seems to be morphing as it has with COVID. The complexity of it changes. And now, when you have people out of work and you have inflation going up, people's tension goes up with that. And so, as far, like I said, the GPS tracking, to me, I know of a young lady that just was killed and her restraining order was just granted. And it depends on which county you're in on how they treat those. So say in Howard County, when the restraining order is granted, because they're both supposed to appear, they will not let the victim and the abuser leave at the same time. They will escort out the victim, let her get away, and then they escort out let the abuser go. But in PG County, they let them both go out at the same time. And there have been assaults in the parking lot at the courthouse.
And this is what I mean. It does not seem like the courts, and it's tough to generalize the courts, meaning in this county, that county, this state, many states. But what education, who needs to be educated when the legal minds who are sitting on the bench are supposed to be the educated ones to help prevent this? Isn't, as a civilian, that seems to be where our hope lies. And it seems now we don't seem to have the hope anymore. How can we reinsure our victims that there is a process out there that will protect you?
Well, there are, to me, this really showcases the inadequacies of the system. And it puts on full display the inadequacies of the entire domestic violence protective measure. Now, in Anne Arundel County, we had a horrible story where a district court judge denied a protective order of an African-American male by the name of Tyreek Hudson. And he wanted the protective order because his neighbor downstairs, who was a white male, was acting strangely. And he gave a sign, like this, like, I'm going to cut you. And even that was not enough. She denied the protective order, and Tyreek Hudson was murdered by the white man. Now, he entered into a plea deal, not criminally responsible. So this was a situation that surfaced in Anne Arundel County. And we saw the state's attorney not put in the same effort she did in the Capitol Gazette killing. She did not retain an expert witness to address the public defender's medical report, like she did in the Capitol Gazette killing. So it's disparate treatment. It's a lot of things. But we can't, sit idly by, just as we saw in the Ahmaud Arbery case. We cannot sit idly by when there are injustices. We can't afford to. And I am so grateful for this day that Ahmaud Arbery's mother, her perseverance, she did not give up. Even though the prosecution told her initially no, she kept going. And this is the type of fight that we have to have if we're going to make changes or be change agents in the system. That's sort of where I'm going with this.
Judge Claudia Barber, here's the thing.
And I'm glad that you brought that up, because I am surprised that that judge is still hearing domestic violence cases, because she was censured by the Commission on Judicial Disabilities. And I thought that she would receive some sort of education. So that.
Now, which one is this? The one in Howard County or the one in
Howard County?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's been censured. And I just want to say, in Montgomery County, there are two things that are somewhat helpful. The first one is that the deputies do let the petitioner, out before, even if there's not a finding, the petitioner goes out first and is allowed to leave the area before they let the respondent out. That's one of the things. The second thing is that there's a group called Court Watch that used to sit in the courtrooms when people were allowed to do that before the pandemic, and they would anonymously watch the judges. They would actually rate judges who do it properly high, and tell them what, and write down and let the public know what the judge did correctly, and would do the same thing with judges who did not do things correctly.
That's good.
And
That's real good.
That was very helpful, but they can't do that anymore because you're not allowed to sit in the courtroom the way you used to.
Right.
So,
I don't.
so Miss Buchanan, what is some of the resources can a woman have to say, I feel protected, that you have noticed that you can advise to?
If she has just a listening ear, someone who understands, they say the healthcare provider is very vital in this chain. If she can talk to her doctor, because the doctor will see the bruises, or she will see the effects of mental and emotional abuse, as far as she could have ulcers, headaches, migraines, those kinds of symptoms. She is a good gateway, or he, to get that woman to talk and then tell her, I hear you, I believe you, and here are resources, domestic violence hotline, these local shelter in their area, which should provide counseling. And like I said, I don't know what's going on with COVID exactly now. A lot of the funding has been cut. It was cut before COVID, but COVID has now like almost decimated some of the shelters funding their budgets. But normally they would be able to go there. They got legal advice, in Howard County. That's what I was helping with facilitate. We would give them suggestions. I'm not a lawyer, so I could not give them advice, but I would give suggestions. So those kinds of things would help. Helping to help hearing other people's stories and how they've come through on the other side is another very valuable tool. Churches should be a place, but a lot of times they don't provide that. There's judgment. There's, oh, well, she's staying in it, so that's her fault. And she must be stupid. But it affects every socioeconomic, every race, every strata of society it affects. So there's no stereotypical abuser and there's no stereotypical victim. And that's what people need to stop with that. If it's 1 in 4 before COVID, now it's 2 in 4 or 3 in 4, then you know someone or you are a victim. And so we all need to help educate ourselves, talk about it, push for better resources, those kind of things.
And also, I'm sorry.
Look at Marylin.
And also in reference to the churches, can we stop there for just 1 second? Because there's some people who would also advocate that, it's, the man is the head of the house, and so he has to keep order, and the Bible says, and all that kind of stuff. What do you say about that?
Hold on, before she answered, Marylin, doesn't that get thrown out the window if it's an abuse issue? I mean, how long do we stay on this
when
track?
people seek help from their church leaders,
right?
Sometimes the church leaders make things even worse by saying that the Bible says that a man has to keep order in his house, and so if you do something that he doesn't necessarily like, he might do something in order to keep order.
Well, I think that having been raised in a home where there, as a preacher's kid, the dynamics of approaching a church, the whole dynamics of this whole domestic violence situation is something that has to be dealt with very, very much delicately. And even though in the biblical world, people want to preserve the marriage institution and hope they get back together. But that's where it becomes so delicate to the point that you want to make sure you're making the right move. And if there is an issue of abuse, there should be some discussion about separating temporarily, using resources so that it doesn't get to a peak level where there's assault, where there's bodily harm and bodily injury. And, because some people just think that because there are no bruises, there's no domestic violence. And I'm like, okay, well, you just lost it. So the other part is that you've got to have the right, it's terrible when you have to say you have to have the right judge. That bothers me.
That bothers me. That
really bothers me.
Yeah.
And that often is the case with murder situations too. You have to have the right judge. I mean, that's terrible. Mm-hmm. That is literally terrible. And that's why we place such great emphasis on putting the right people on the bench, and not looking at this when you're evaluating, when you have the opportunity to vote for judges, that you look at it from the standpoint that, what's the composition of your bench. And I was participating actually in a conversation with the community and the bench about a week or two ago. And one of the psychologists or professionals said something that stuck with me, and I really believe the statement he said. And he said that the studies have shown that just because you put Black cops on the force, that doesn't mean that they will change policing.
No.
And that doesn't mean it, and it fixes the problem with bad policing. And the same way he says,
I think sometimes they say that sometimes that's even worse, because when you have just a couple of them, they want to show that they're part of the group.
Correct.
And
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then the same thing he said, the studies have also shown just because you put Black judges on the bench doesn't mean that the judicial system is fixed.
No.
That's not the answer.
No.
And I thought that was an excellent point that he made, and he presented to the public, because it is important. But we have to get it right. And even though we have limited information, I don't have a lot of faith in the judicial nominating commission appointment process. I have very little faith in it.
Is that why they're going after Marylin so hard? I mean, we're not really getting off topic, because this is all in such cumbersome. When you have a victim, and it's a big V, a huge V, victim. We're not talking about a person who lies, falsifies. We're talking about a victim. They go get help. They go to court and ask for help. And now it depends on the judge. Mm-hmm. If you have the right judge, you will get the help. You will get the help you so deserve. And is that why they're going after Marylin so hard? Because they don't want her to be the right judge, the proper judge? It's scary.
It is scary.
Very scary. I have a friend who is a lawyer in DC, and she's appointed court cases, and many times she's to defend the abuser. And she told me, don't get upset with me. I said, no, I'm not upset with you at all. Somebody's got to do it. I said, but we also need to focus on getting help for the abuser as opposed to just throwing him away. And it doesn't mean you're, saying for him to get back with the victim. That's not what that is about. But she said, among Black people, there's a tendency for Black women to fight back because they are not heard. they're invisible to the court system, or they are to blame. And so they have started fighting back. They're also being baited so their abuser will abuse them, hoping that they'll do something. And once they do, say they scratch him on his face, they call the cops. Cops come, oh, he's got scratches, you're going, they take them both to jail. What's happening to the kids if there's kids in the home? So there's a reason why women don't call the cops all the time. They try to handle it on their own. But when they do end up in the system, they're now saying, well, you're just as abusive as he is, or she. Sometimes a woman is the aggressor, and the other person is simply fighting back. As we know, there's a case now with attached to the Kyle Rittenhouse. She was a trafficked child, and she killed her trafficker who she lived with, an older white man. I think she was 12 or 13 when he captured her, and he kept her prisoner. And so she murdered him. She burned the house down and she took his car. And so they're saying, oh, that's not necessarily self-defense. She premeditated all this because she did these things in sequence. So there's her defense is saying, hey, you gave Kyle Rittenhouse the green light and said it was self-defense. This is self-defense, when it certainly is self-defense. But there again is the disparaging of a Black woman in particular, as she is seen stronger than the average person, and we may be, but that doesn't mean that everyone has a right to beat up on us and abuse us and walk away. And so that's how we're seen in society, and that's how we're seen in the court system, and that's what needs to be advocated against. We need to stop just accepting it and saying, oh, well, she stays. So she hit him back, so she's just as bad as he is. Like with Ray Rice, classic case. They said they beat up on each other all the time. Ray Rice kept bench past 350 pounds. You tell me who had the power there? Not her. She could have hit him all day, every day. She still did not have the ability to harm that he did. And I'm sure she probably was not the aggressor. She felt she was defending herself. So, and then she's to blame for the demise of his career. But anyway.
No, we talked about that recently, how the same prosecutor who prosecuted Maritza Alexander also prosecuted George Zimmerman. And with Maritza Alexander for shooting a gun off in her house to keep someone she had a protective order against away from her, she got 20 years. That was the minimum sentence, 20 years. She only served 3, but, well, I shouldn't say only, because she shouldn't have served any, but she got 20 years. George Zimmerman, killed Trayvon Martin and got nothing. So, and it was the same prosecutor, she just prosecuted the cases differently. So I see what you say in terms of some of the cases are prosecuted one way, or certain charges are brought against one person, but not against someone else.
Is there a way, I'm not, and this is more of a question that came up on the social media. How can you prove that the accusation is viable, or is it real? Is there a way?
There is a way. It's not, again, with Black women, it's hard, but every time there's an instance, they're saying call, because that's documentation. They're saying file a report, there's documentation. They're saying write in a journal, that's documentation. Tell a trusted friend or family member, that is documentation. And there are ways, for instance, like with physical abuse, that are so much easier to prove than coercive control, which is emotional abuse. The UK is the only place now that recognizes coercive control. But that could be in financial. You can prove that you don't have access to money. You can prove that you've been isolated, where you're not going anywhere, you're being told how to dress. Those kinds of things are hard to prove, but they can be proven. And again, that goes to the training of the people on the bench, the lawyers in the courtroom, the social workers, the healthcare providers need to be educated on, and it's also patterns. It's not somebody saying one time, this person did that. This is a pattern of behavior. So there's also body language. They say if a man goes into the doctor's office with his wife and she's all nervous, and it's like he's trying to keep her from saying anything, and you can feel the tension in the room. And people need to, not everybody is that wise, but some doctors can sense it, and they'll know, and they'll try to get her alone and say, do you feel safe? Who's at home with you? Those kind of questions. They need to be taught to screen by asking questions.
Another sad point is oftentimes when the judge misses it, or even if the judge does enter a protective order and then the aggressor comes back and kills the domestic violence victim. Those are situations where it really didn't matter that the protective order was signed. Because that person was going to disobey the protective order. I'm going to get back at you. And it's that retaliation, that vengeance part. And that's scary on any level, especially if the protective order is denied.
That's what I'm saying that's so important about GPS tracking. But if it's denied, I believe that the victim has to take drastic measures. She can't just go home and go to as normal. She can't. And that's what I'm talking. The young lady just killed. But I mean, I have been involved in a case where the victim escaped, that her husband at the time was in the military. She went to the military tribunal, whatever they call it, and they just, and she tried going through the regular court system and they kept denying. She finally goes back to the military because another soldier's wife ended up missing and they found her buried in the backyard. So they said, because she had complained about his abuse, and so they said, okay, maybe we better take this seriously. So she was able to go to the court of his peers in the Marines, and they could have given him 67 years for what he did, because he tried to kill the child as well. And the child is impaired to this day. Choked her 3 times. They gave him 3 months.
No.
3 months.
No.
Then they let him out early, so he didn't even do 3 months. Once they released him he's now angry because now he has no career. That's the only job he'd ever had. And that's when I met her. She was terrified that he was going to find her because she was now in Maryland. He had been in North Carolina. And so I went to the county executive of Howard County and I said, she needs help, because if I go straight to the police, they're going to say, wait till he does something, then we'll do something. I said, because another reason she was so terrified is because her father had recently killed her mother. Her parents had been in an abusive relationship for 25 years. I mean, she said they fed off of each other. It was toxic. The father would, being the male, was the aggressor, but he had tried to get help. He was from another country. And they say you have to be arrested in order to be put in an abuser program. So he was never arrested. So he never got the help. He was now mentally declining. And so he kills her mother. She had fled from her husband, to feel safe at home. And then that happened. So when I went to the county executive, he jumped on it. He assigned, he went to the police chief, I'm supposing, and they assigned someone to monitor her, to be a patrol in the neighborhood. I found they were monitoring me because they thought I was related to her. But we went to the trial. It was in Virginia, and Howard County police showed up,
Wow.
to make sure, because they were afraid he was going to show up because it's a public trial, because her father was on trial for killing her mother. And they thought that her ex-husband could show up at that trial. but they were there. They put an APB out on this man, the whole Eastern Seaboard, and said
Wow.
he's not going to come in this county and kill anybody. So that was amazing. Okay, it was like, but that's rare. It's so rare, you know, for that to happen. She's still suffering the effects of all of it, you know, to this day, and she can't quite get her footing. She's doing very well for what she's been through. Her sister was working for a doctor in Howard County. He had a clinic, he had 2 clinics, I believe, and he was getting her father medicines in prison that worked better for him, where the prison system was giving him something that was making him worse. So he's getting this man medicine in prison. And then one Sunday he goes in to the backyard with his wife. He had 3 children at home, and kills her and kills himself.
Wow. But
What in the world?
if people can also picture the Tina Turner movie, I forgot What's Love Got to Do with It, and how she was, how Ike was in hot pursuit of her when she tried to break from that relationship, and how after he got a hold of her, he punched her and, punched the daylights out of her. It's that type of retaliation that should always be at the forefront, in my opinion, of every judge's ruling. My ruling is going to have what impact on this relationship?
But again, people detach themselves from it because hey, I'm not going through it. I must be a great person, and I don't know anybody. Maybe my daughter or my whatever hasn't gone through it. So how's it going to affect? But it does affect every aspect of society, because that person that's been abused might have the cure to cancer. You know, if they were able to function in a normal, healthy way, they might be in that lab getting that cure for something. So you just don't know. And it affects children. So that affects the future. We can't stop, we have to stop just saying, it's not my problem. But the judges, and again, are very much detached. Most of them, not all of them.
But that's it's not all of them, but the bad part is that you have judges that are detached from the community, and they live in a bubble. Some of them do, to the point that they don't know what it's like to be in that situation. And to that extent, they make too many presumptions that are wrong, and not based on evidence, but based on some idea. And some of it comes out in judicial opinions, because I've seen some dissenting opinions that, where they're not paying attention to what they're writing. They're just showing their biases and their strong biases in what they're writing.
But this goes, but Judge Barber, this goes back to who oversees this. Like, isn't there like an idea, and like in my fantasy blue purple world, a judge is getting the education like ZANITA's talking about. Who makes sure that a judge gets the education?
No one. Now that's another problem. That first of all, there are judicial institutes that judges go through. Even elected judges who run in contested elections, and they're elected, not appointed. They all go through judicial institutes. So there's a lot of judicial training there, and some of it has increased to the point that they have diversity training too. But one thing though is that in the case of federal judges, see, they're lifetime appointments, and in my opinion, in my humble opinion, lifetime appointments for judges is a bad idea, because they are too detached. They live their lives invincible, as though you can't remove them, and it's hard to remove them. They can be as racist as they want to be. They can rule with their strong biases as they want to be. There's no control over their behavior and their misconduct. And I don't have a lot of credibility give a lot of credibility to these judicial commissions either. Most of them are people who are politically appointed, and they're running the show, and they're not doing it in a fair and impartial manner. They're protecting many bad judges from staying on the bench, and that's just wrong.
Zanita?
Yeah, it's old boys network, and they protect each other.
We had a question. Go ahead, Marylin.
Yeah. Or are you going to address the question in the chat?
You go ahead.
Oh, okay. There's a question on the chat from Bernadette. Bernadette, do you want to ask your question, or do you want me to read it? Okay, well, Bernadette usually joins us, but she must be busy today. Bernadette, thanks you so much for your work, Ms. Buchanan.
We thank you. Yes, we do.
You're welcome.
Thank you too.
Thank you so much for your work. And she says, please let us know what made the difference in the Howard County case where the police set out an APB against the ex-military abusive spouse.
I think it had to do with me going to the county executive personally. I took the young lady first I went to a party that he was holding, and I said, I need to talk to you. Can I come to you, to your office? He said, of course. And I took her up there, and we sat with other executives at his table, and she told her story, and he had a heart for it. And so he did what he did. He had a good heart.
Excellent.
And that's, I think, really, you have to get more involved than just the normal everyday thing. I mean, I say God too, because I didn't know, how did I know to do that? I asked him for help, and he put that in my mind to do that. Hers was an extreme case at the moment. Most people don't have that much drama, or those parallel things going on at the same time. But that's what made the difference, me going to him personally and pleading on her behalf and letting her tell the story. I think, had the mall shooting happened yet? Yeah, the mall shooting had just happened as well. So I think they were, on heightened alert from that as well. Like, we're not going to have any more, because a lot of times when they come after the victim, they take other people out with them, just like the guy showed the other night, with how many people are dead now? 6?
Yeah.
So it's not just that part. That's another reason we can't ignore this or let it just fly and let them walk away from it, because it's going to affect other people. A lot of these mass shootings have to do with something that started with domestic, intimate partner violence.
Yeah. What is some of the before we're about ready to close, and Marylin, what are some of the solutions you think you can give to women, and where can they go? How can they contact you? Because there's still people, women, men, whoever it is that's a victim, they are afraid, and that fear holds them in place. We need to get them out. That's why I host all these other shows. But how can we get them out and say, don't be afraid, when even as we speak, we know there's so many situations they're not going to be heard?
I believe that we have to put our money where our mouth is. If they don't have anywhere to go, that's why they don't leave. If they're not going to be able to buy food or feed their children, we don't have adequate shelters. I don't know how many of you have watched The Maid on Netflix.
Yeah, that was excellent.
Shelter was amazing. Okay, that's rare. That's the kind of shelters we should have multiple in big city urban areas. There shouldn't be just one. There should be apartment buildings that are bought and protected that provide for the women. Now, if they're men, I haven't really dealt with men. The men that the maybe one or two that did come for help ended up just walking away and not wanting to go through the whole process. But I'm speaking because of women, because they're 85% of the victims. But I believe that we have to start literally funding and providing places for them to go, not just say, oh, we're going to counsel you today. The legal aspect is huge, because that's where they get screwed. That's where they get left with nothing. I have many friends who have gone through and left with nothing because they didn't have the money to pay a lawyer to write up the documents, and they were out lawyered by their abuser. And especially if
Sometimes
they have
more better financed.
exactly, that's what I'm saying. They were out lawyered because their abuser had the money. Even if they worked, their abuser may have earned more money than them. So they, and I've seen women very, very wealthy, still, they might have gotten away. Like one woman was able to extract $25,000 from her account before she left. But in the grand scheme, how long is that gonna last, So that's the issue, is being able to get legal representation and having a place to go. And it can't just be, because in Howard County, it's 18 months, I think is the longest you can stay in a shelter, and that's pretty long. And if you have a male child over the age of 12, he can't come with you. So there's just all these little nuances and issues that come up that don't make it safe, that don't make it plausible for a woman to leave. And so we've got to start having funding and places for them to go, like that shelter in the Maid.
I have a question about the electronic monitoring. How does it know when the perpetrator comes within a certain distance of the victim?
It's just like the phone. If if they want to track you, they can use your phone because it's pinging off of the towers. That's how the GPS tracking works. This one man had it on and he cut it off, and everybody went into high alert. They say he's cut it off, he's coming for you. So again, it gives people a chance to at least try to get away, protect themselves, to hide, or whatever they need to do. The guy just is not able to show up at their job, and they walk out, bam, he shot them. And so the GPS, to me, is the key right here for right now, and this time we're living in. There's more guns being bought than ever before, they say, in the history of them tracking gun sales. And so it doesn't take much for an abuser to get a weapon. Even if the background check is done, they don't always follow through with it, and they don't always care because they just want the money that the gun brings. So if a person an abuser has a tracker on him, there is a lot of hope of not, because they said in Connecticut, they did this to 119 at high risk offenders. These were deemed very high risk. 0 harm done to their victims because they knew they were being watched. But the ones that know, hey, I can violate that order all day and nothing's gonna happen to me, they're going to do it. Now, the ones that, they get it and then they try to kill because they're mad because you got again, I think someone needs to go into hiding. Something, you can't go around. There has to be a different way of looking at these protective orders, or these orders of, you can't just say, oh, I got this piece of paper right here and now I'm safe. No, that's just the first step in it.
Mr. Wilbur Friedman.
Okay, I have a quick question. At 10 o'clock on the morning, this morning, the bad guy was at the corner of 10th and Main, and he had the tracker on. How does the victim know to stay away from 10th and Main at that particular time?
It will alert the police of his position, and then they will alert her of where he is, if he's within so many feet of her, because in the order, it has to specify, especially her home and her work. The gray area gets, okay, she goes to Target. But again, she can help them by telling them where she is, the police, so that if he pings within so many feet of her, they'll say, hey, he's here.
I can see how this becomes cumbersome for the county, because you have so many people that you're monitoring, like an airplane, right? Like a flight controller. and you're watching the victim and you're watching the abuser. So do both of them have trackers, or
Well,
just
if the victim is wise to let them track her. If
okay?
if she can't just go to Target, or she can't, you know what I mean? I think there should be independent entities that becomes a business where they monitor, like the air traffic controllers, under the jurisdiction of the police. But yeah, we can't expect the police to track, because they're also tracking drug traffickers and all kinds of things. So it should be another entity that is there just for that. And also to assess the lethality of that behavior, like, has he done this, has he done that? Criteria that they can go through from experience, from other people's stories, to tell whether he's more likely to do this. And then say, okay, you're going into hiding tonight. You're not going to work tomorrow. Or you're not, for the next week. But the economic effect of that is what keeps people from, oh, I'm going to work, I'll lose my job, type of thing. Or him coming, like the lady, was a famous case in DC where he comes into her job. I think she worked at AT&T or one of those, and threw the acid in her face. But they usually have security. So I believe that if he had had a monitor and he was even nearby, everybody locked down, locked the door, and nobody's coming in. You know what I mean? They call the police and arrest him because he's violated this order. Those kind of things. I don't think every single person who has a protective order should be tracked. It's just the ones who are deemed to be, dangerous or more likely to abuse us. There's criteria that we can follow to see that.
Do we have 3 minutes to talk about the Ahmaud Arbery trial, Dr. Dyer and Marylin?
We do. Let's get into it, because I think we should. I want to do more than 3 minutes, but let's bring it up, because also the Rittenhouse, I want to talk about.
Rittenhouse too.
We have to.
But first of all, thank you, Ms. Buchanan.
Yes.
That was
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thanks for
join us
having-
in the discussion join us in the discussion that we are about to have as well. We would like to hear from you.
There's so much to discuss about these cases that, again, goes back to my thing. What are the view lens you're looking through? Because so many people are looking through their own personal emotional lens that they're not looking at the case in itself, and then we're not looking at the systematic issue in itself. I think there's two different views.
Well, I think that this verdict was something, in my opinion, about righting a wrong, holding accountable. Those are the immediate thoughts in my mind about accountability, and the fact that there was none at the beginning of this, but we had to progress to that. And again, it just puts a black eye and puts on full display how inadequate and insufficient the system can be, because she should have started with charges being brought. The mother should not have had waited a year and this story to hit the New York Times,
right,
for all of a sudden people to pay attention. And the same thing with Elijah McClain's case too. Right. George Floyd's death sparked Elijah McClain. Hey, there's something else happening in Colorado, and the man. Now, the worst thing about Elijah's case, just as George Floyd, those were lynchings, because number one, Elijah posed no threat to anybody.
No one.
He didn't have a gun, and he wasn't being stopped for a traffic violation. Now, the thing about the Ahmaud Arbery case that's very interesting is the fact that these 3 defendants literally thought that a Black man was supposed to stop because you said so.
Right.
So that was the problem right then and there. And they're like, he has a duty to stop and answer to you. I'm like, who are you?
What about the rifle?
What is the
Well, I think it's more than that because if I'm jogging down the street and I see these trucks come after me and then I see a rifle come out, what am I supposed to do?
What am I
Run
supposed to do?
faster.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, but that to me was troubling, and all you pulled out guns just because you thought,
Mhm.
just because you thought, not that you were in any danger, but
Right.
just because you thought.
Well, to
Yeah.
me, the climate of the country, they were just told that they're the minority, but that's been the fear all along.
Mhm.
All along.
So,
All along.
I mean, it's been the fear for what, 200 years now? But now that they've been told statistically, we have the proof that you are the minority, they, in their minds, are trying to preserve themselves. And so they have to show their superiority by their authority. And now they feel like they can go and just tell us anything. They can just kill us. They can just do whatever they want. And the courts are saying, yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. You can do whatever you want. You can kill them at will. This has been going on. There was a little break, maybe, where the civil rights movement happened and we had some movement but now we're going backwards. They elected a president who backed that up for them. It wasn't that he created this environment.
No.
He only validated it. And so now they feel now we can just do what we've been wanting to do.
They thought they were Donald
That's what they're
Trump.
doing.
They literally thought that they could blow off these charges just like Donald Trump escaped a conviction of impeachment. I mean, they just think the same way. They're above the law.
This is our
You know,
second.
right.
This is our second Reconstruction. This is our second Reconstruction, and through Reconstruction, there was more killings, more murders than it was ever before Reconstruction. This is what all this is. This is and so after we have a black president, this is Reconstruction. So things are being turned up and turned over, and now it's time to put it on the courts. And we know what happened to the courts. There have been more appointed people that throughout the land that now covers the court system. We lost the courts.
Donald Trump appointed, they say, 172 judges to stack all around the country, to stack the courts against people of color.
And that's so sad because a lot of them got lifetime appointments.
Right.
Very sad.
What is more sad is that a lot of them could have been appointed by Barack Obama and were not.
That too.
We faced, as Black people in this country, we faced violence from the time of Reconstruction up till now. I think a lot of times if you didn't have that cell phone, and I think at NAACP, Image Awards should be given to the cell phone because
yeah, because without the cell phone video and the I'm sorry, you guys know who I mean. I'm sorry, I don't mean any disrespect by mispronouncing his name, but without that cell phone video that one of the defendants thought would be helpful, I don't think there would have been a conviction, because I think it would have been, oh yes, we approached him very nicely and asked him, did he see anything happening in the neighborhood? And then he started getting violent. He pulled the rifle out of the truck, and then he was going to shoot me, so I had to shoot him to.
And he's not here to defend himself.
Yeah,
See, that's the
exactly.
biggest issue. He's not here to defend himself.
So without that video,
Same
so
thing
I
with
agree with
Trayvon Martin.
yeah, exactly. I agree
Same
with
thing with
you.
Trayvon Martin.
And
Yeah.
not only that, when you're looking at how the mainstream media sews up all of the information, if we did not have the alternative ways to even upload those images.
Right.
Right. To me, what has been going on, even though we see it visually now, it never stopped.
Right.
And that is what we are not really putting all of the pieces together. This has never stopped. They had slavery back in the 50s and the 60s in places in Mississippi. They were still slaves, even though they were calling it sharecropping and all of that. that was still going on. So to me, this country has been going on the way it's been going on. Now, how does it get away from that when they don't even want to really teach critical race theory, because it will expose all of the lies that they've been telling all of those years, you know? So I don't know where we go from here as Black people in this country, because it is what it is.
And this is a very narcissistic country.
Yeah.
And it's that they want to create their own alternative universe where they talk about the Bible, but they don't follow anything in it. And they
Right,
want to make
exactly.
this nation into a totalitarian nation. They proved that on January the 6th.
Exactly.
And
Did
they're willing
anybody
to
hear?
burn the whole house down.
Yes, did anybody hear? I'm just looking like white people are going to certain states like Wyoming. It's about 6 states that they're trying to start white, just white
Only.
communities, yeah, within the United States.
Mhm.
And I forgot what they were calling it, but that's what's going on now.
Well,
Yeah.
it's okay because Blacks have started to do that, you know, or would like to have done that, or some similar to that. I know there's a couple of families in Atlanta that did that, that bought the property, that has started a, you know, Black community, a Black-owned community, and things like that. I just think it's getting bad if we go into separation. It's not going to be helpful for Black people. It may be helpful for white people, but it doesn't help Black people. We go into separation because as Bernadette, as Zanita said, that there are now the minority population is still the majority. So
What do you mean?
like, so we still only make up only 46%. We only have 46 million Black people in America, African American, that deems African American. So that doesn't make up any. We're in the 13-14% total. So they may feel like they've lost so many things, but they still have the majority of people. Yeah.
But it seems to me that when I was in school 40 years ago, we made up 13% of the population. It seems to me that if we increase geometrically, let's say one person, yourself, when you have children, you have branched out 2 and 3 times, how is it that we're still 13% of the population? And even people coming in here who haven't been here for 25 years have a larger percentage of the population.
It's built into the system. It's systemic racism we always hear about. It's literally a formula that they follow. This is what I believe, where if it gets to, because that's why the prisons are there. Okay, too many. Okay, get some more in prison. Let's falsely accuse them, or let's just shoot some.
Yeah,
let's just shoot them. Some will disappear. You know, we'll never know what happened to them. Some will kill in public, or we'll have food deserts where their diet is now affecting their health and they're dying quick, you know, sooner.
So
and in the case of Kevin Strickland, who was exonerated after 42 years, it's like, who cares? You know, 42 years, and he's got to come out and rebuild his life from there. All of that is, you know, Black lives don't matter. All of that is pretty much, you know, so what? You know, there's no compensation statute for him for being wrongfully convicted. I mean, there's none in Missouri. So, you know, the fact that they did that to him is, you know, of no moment. They could care less. So that we have to get a real grip on their mentality and you know, why, you know, the wheels of justice turn so slowly, not just for him, but also for Ahmaud Arbery's case and getting to trial. It wasn't a fast process at all.
Right. America had to turn to tyranny in order to be what it is. And they don't want to acknowledge that. We had 10 years after slavery where we got help, we got funding, we got education. But then they rose up, especially poor whites, and said, why are you educating them? They're going to pass us up because in a short amount of time, we did an amazing thing, you know? We prospered, we were doing well, and they couldn't understand it. Look what they've been through, and look, so they got scared, they got terrified, and said, these people are gonna become
Pass us.
strong and wealthy,
Pass
and then
us.
right,
Yes.
and they're gonna turn around and do to us what we did to them, which we had no intention. All we wanted was a chance. Just leave us alone and let life happen as it happens. We will work hard. We have built this country on our backs already, okay? So nobody has anything unless we were involved in it. And there's been their fear that we're going to become too strong and keep proving them wrong, that we are human beings 100%, and that we can survive and prosper. And so they keep trying to prove that wrong, and that's the court system the way it is, and that's why everything's the way it is, because they want to.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to You Be the Judge. We'll be back next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Everyone have a beautiful Thanksgiving. Thank you.